Hi, this is Kim Cruz with my EDL 853 case study. So what do I know about the situation with Carl and his general ed teacher and special education teacher? Carl's behaviors have changed over the past few months and become more aggressive, possibly due to his parents' divorce. Mrs. Taylor is afraid of Carl's new behaviors. She is also afraid for Carl's peers and that they might get hurt. Mrs. Taylor would like him removed from the general education classroom for the entirety of the day. Home supports appear to be limited based on his parents' reactions within the meeting. The IEP has been amended to include a behavior intervention plan with periodic pullout for behaviors, not full-day pullout. And that restraint was mentioned in assisting Carl with his behaviors. So what do I need to know? I need to know the antecedents and consequences of Carl's behaviors. So why is he doing it and what is he getting out of that? I need to know the resources available in the community for mental health concerns. I also need to know the counseling availability within the school. Is there a school counselor available? How often is the school psychologist there? I want to explore more and know the parent concerns in the home and what they're seeing. Mom mentioned in the meeting that she works a lot and isn't home a lot, so would like to know more of the parent side. I would also like to know behavioral resources within the co-op. Do they have behavior specialists that can come in and help Miss Green and Mrs. Taylor? And I would like to know specific concerns from the general education teacher more than what was stated in the case study, more specifics and more details about her concerns for Carl. So the problem. Carl, a student with behavior disorder, has become more aggressive in the general education classroom. He has started throwing things, yelling at his peers, and slamming books on his desk. Mrs. Taylor is frustrated and afraid of these new behaviors. Mrs. Taylor wants to not abide by least restrictive environment laws and have him pulled from the general education classroom. And Mrs. Taylor is unhappy with the change in the IEP to pull Carl only upon instances of hostile behaviors. So the plan of action. As an administrator, I would meet with Mrs. Taylor and listen to her concerns and fully understand where her frustrations lie. I would discuss with Mrs. Taylor special education laws concerning least restrictive environment and how it affects Carl and her classroom. I would have the school psychologist get permission to test and complete a functional behavior assessment. Part of that assessment would determine antecedents and consequences of the behavior and to determine the function of the behaviors. I would have the school psychologist or school counselor get permission to begin biweekly counseling sessions to help Carl deal with what might be causing these behavioral outbursts and the change in his behaviors. I would research outside agencies that could provide resources for the family, mental health services, Big Brothers Big Sisters. Being in a rural setting, this community could be lacking in those sorts of services. But I would do research to find out what is available and where we could steer the family to get help. I would also schedule a follow-up IEP meeting to go over the evaluation and how the interventions are working and to provide information to parents about the resources. Within the meeting, we would determine the next steps based on data collected and the student's needs. And I would get Mrs. Taylor and Mrs. Green further training on appropriate positive behavior supports. A system like MANT would benefit both of them. MANT trains on de-escalation of behaviors and could help both teachers better deal with the situation. So resolving the issue. IDEA and least restrictive environment apply to this situation. The law states that Carl should be educated with his general education peers to the maximum extent that is appropriate. It is important to look at that appropriateness for not only Carl but also for his peers. It is the responsibility of the administrator to ensure safety and appropriate education for all students. It is important to let evaluations and data drive the decisions in changing Carl's IEP. Following up on how the interventions are carried out and ensuring data is collected is the role of the administration. It is also important to meet with Mrs. Taylor to allow her concerns to be voiced and heard. She needs to be a valued member of the team in making decisions with Carl's IEP and in her other students' safety. So what I'm thinking, I think that both teachers in this case are correct in their concerns. Mrs. Taylor is right to be concerned over the behaviors and the safety of all of her students as well as herself. Ms. Green is correct in not wanting to pull Carl out for the entire day. Better communication between teachers, which can be facilitated through administration, and data collection need to happen. What I'm valuing, student safety is of the utmost importance. The initial plan is a good start, but more information is needed and data is needed to fully understand the behaviors and their function. Feelings. Carl's needs are still not fully understood or explored. The plan should evolve as more data is collected. And teachers and staff need more training on how to handle aggressive behaviors, and not just Mrs. Taylor and Miss Green, but all staff involved. Unresolved issues. Carl's emotional needs are not being addressed. He is in need of counseling of some sort, whether it be in school or private therapy, depending upon what's available. Rural communities typically have limited resources, and finding what is available for Carl and his parents is important part of helping Carl and Mrs. Taylor. Carl's peers' concerns are not currently being addressed. Speaking with the class to help them feel safe and to address their fears is important. Addressing school policy on restraint is also an unresolved issue. Research and Kansas state guidelines do not support restraint or seclusion in dealing with behaviors. If staff is considering restraint, administration should do more training on the issue. Training of staff is important in dealing with Carl's behaviors. By training staff in the most effective ways of dealing with behaviors, school resources can be utilized to benefit Carl and his peers. Through counseling, Carl can better learn appropriate social emotional skills in dealing with his frustrations and anger. This situation can also be used as a learning situation for Carl's peers. They can learn better ways of handling their own feelings and emotions. Carl's behaviors are affecting not only his academic progress, but also his peers. It is the administrator's responsibility to provide resources to staff to help Carl manage his own behaviors so that he and his peers can better progress in their academics. Utilizing social skills education can help Carl and his peers better handle their emotional needs. Kansas Department of Education outlines social emotional standards that can help guide Mrs. Taylor and Miss Green in teaching skills to the entire third grade level. As an administrator, it is important to support staff in their emotional needs. Not only the students are affected by an individual student with behavioral concerns, but staff are affected a great deal. By Mrs. Taylor and Miss Green modeling appropriate emotional coping skills, they can be role models for their students. That's where administration comes in supporting the staff in their own personal needs. Carl's social emotional needs need to be addressed through counseling. He needs to be taught how to deal with personal issues in productive ways. The administrator can be a tool in helping to reward this productive reactions. Balancing Carl's needs with his peers' needs will help all students be successful, not only emotionally but also academically. Academic success comes through good classroom management, and the administrator is there as a resource and tool for that. Student achievement can be affected by feelings of being unsafe. Carl's peers need to feel safe in the classroom. The administrator needs to be present and visible to help students feel safe. And the administrator's role is to ensure that all students' needs are being met, not just academically, but emotionally as well. Through securing training for staff, both academics and social emotional skills can progress. Thank you for your time.